welcome to NAPOD, where we provide NA speaker meetings and workshops in a podcast. We are an ad-free podcast, and if you enjoy listening, please help us to be self-supporting by visiting napod.xyz, look for the donate link, and drop $1 or $2 in the virtual basket. If you're also in AA or have friends that are, please tell them about our other podcast, Sobercast. Sobercast features AA speakers and workshops in the same format as NAPOD. We upload a new speaker every day, and it's easy to subscribe by searching for Sobercast, that's 2 words, on any podcast player app, or go to Sobercast.com. Enjoy the podcast, and thanks for listening.
Hi, I'm Jim. I'm an addict.
Hey, Jim.
I want to thank Christy for asking me to share tonight. I've been coming to this meeting for ever since it started in September of 2003, and and at first I was a secretary, and then I had a gig. In fact, I still have a gig, a speaker getter, and I said I would never speak at this meeting, and the reason I said that was I used to be co-secretaries with a guy at another meeting, and we were supposed to get the speakers, and he liked to get himself to speak a lot. In fact, I remember sitting there at this meeting, and this guy's asked himself to speak again, and of course his topic after asking himself to speak twice is his humility. And he wanted to bring us up to date on the improvement in his humility. So he'd asked himself to speak, and I'm sitting there, I'm thinking should I just let it pass, or should I launch a fucking attack on this guy, And I thought, you know what, I'll just let it pass, but I'm never ever going to ask myself to speak at my own meeting, So anyway, that's that's where that comes from. But I'm glad to be here, and it's been a really hard week for me. And and maybe I'll speak better. I don't know, but it's been a rough week for me, and it's been about we had this woman that spoke here before. Her name was Claudia, and you can look her up on the website. And and Claudia talked about one thing. She talked about a lot of things, but the thing that really stuck with me, she talked about sometimes recovery's just learning how to live with the mess that you make. And that's what she said. Recovery is just about learning how to live with the mess that you make. So, I've been, confronted with a lot of my own actions, some of which were not so good, and, and been coping with those for a while. And it's, and it's difficult. When I got clean, I was the kind when I used, I never wanted to use with anybody because, at some point there was only going to be enough dope for one. In fact, there was always only enough dope for one. And, and I wasn't the kind of, I didn't use, I come from a nice family. I have, I'm the only drug addict. I'm the only one who's ever done any serious jail time. And, I have 7 brothers and sisters, and, none of them are, in recovery, and, and all that. But you know what? I was just a fuck up of the family, and that was all there was to it. And I got, I don't know where I'm going with this, but I got to the point where I actively sought out the use of drugs. I started smoking pot at an early age. I bought my first pound of pot with the money from my paper route. I started dealing it, and then it was a little apartment building where I used to get the papers delivered and had a little room to do that. We used to cut up the ounces in there, and and all that kind of stuff. And I don't know, I was 13 maybe or something like that, and and it was just, and and it just went on from there. And I used to use a lot of drugs I didn't want to use, but I used them anyway. I ended up, and I actively sought out more and different drugs. I wasn't one of those passive people who just, I used to come to NA, and there were people that around that were, they're their whole families were drug dealers, and and they're, and half their relatives were in the, were in the joint, and the other half were in rehab, and the other half were dead, and the other half, whatever. And and I used to think those people were real addicts, and I come from a nice family, and And I didn't, and I didn't go through all the stuff that other people did in terms of like, hanging out with other drug addicts. I just kind of like ran my own scams, got my own money, got my own dope, shot my own dope, and that was it, So I wasn't like, I wasn't like hooked up like that in some ways. And so I used to think like I didn't belong in NA because I wasn't, I didn't have 15 relatives in the slammer. But what I've realized in my time in Narcotics Anonymous is that, I actively sought out the use of drugs. I actually sought out drugs, and I would end up, and I was always alone. Either I would be doing my little thing to raise money, and and I was into like phone fraud and scams and stuff like that, and I'd be doing that, or I would be going out to cop, and if I was with like normal people trying to steal money from them, I always felt like I was different than them. And if I was buying dope from somebody, I always felt like I was different from them. So no matter what happened, and I got to the point where I would just stay in my home, and I would just stay in my house, and I would never leave my house if I didn't have to, and I would like read the newspaper, and I would be there, and I would, and I'd be reading about like some bank robbery or something, and they got like $2,500. I think, wow, man, I stole $2,500 today, and I didn't even leave my house. I mean, these people. This bank robbery is stupid, man. You got to go outside, and and whatever. So, and that was the point. And and then I got involved in something, and I got arrested, and then I got probation. And then the thing about like getting arrested is like once you start getting arrested, you tend to get arrested like a lot. You can go like, I don't know anyone else that had this experience, but you can go a long time using drugs and not get arrested. But once you start getting arrested, it's like, it's like all of a sudden you're getting arrested like all the time. And, I'm not sure exactly how that works, but it seems like some other people in this room have had the same experience. And, so then I started getting arrested a lot, and and I got arrested one time. I was on methadone, and I'm like locked on this like 4-man chain on this bus, and we're driving like right by. I can see the methadone clinic, and I'm like thinking like, what can I tell the driver that'll make him stop? And I don't know. So anyway, I went to my first meeting in Narcotics Anonymous in 1986, and I don't know why I went. Some women, I think the woman I was living with made me go, but I don't even remember. And but then I went to a couple of meetings, and I never went back. And then in 1989, I was sitting in my house, and somebody was totally some woman from the neighborhood was trying to get her husband. She and he were smoking rocks, and they wanted to stop, and they didn't know where to go, and there wasn't, they didn't have any money, and they didn't have any insurance, and nobody wanted them, and and they came over to my house, and they asked me what to do, or she came over, and and I said, yeah, you know what, if you don't have any money, and you don't have any insurance, and you want to stop using, there's really only one place to go, the county jail. Just call the cops. They'll take your old man away, and then he'll get 90 days for under the influence. He'll do about 45. He'll come back. He won't have any shoes, but you can go pick him up in a month and a half. What's the problem? And she said, I want to send my old man to jail. I said, well, no, it'll be okay. He'll be all right. Because you know what? I'm a humanitarian at heart. And if he needs to go to jail to get her out of my living room, then you know what? He's just got to suck it up. So I said to him, so she said, no, I don't want to. So I ended up saying, well, I went to these meetings. They're called Narcotics Anonymous, and I don't know anything about them, but there are these people that used to use and they don't use, and whatever. And they said, well, where are they? And I called the hotline, and I got her a meeting, and I sent her away, And a couple of weeks later, she and he both came back to my house, and they said, Jim, we want to thank you. We've been going to these NA meetings for 2 weeks. And neither of us have used in 2 weeks. I thought, 2 weeks? That's a long time. I was pretty impressed, because 2 weeks is a long time. If you're using and you don't use for 2 weeks, that's a long, in my book, 2 weeks, long time. And they said, and we think you ought to go too. And that's how I got clean. So they took me off to this meeting called at the Joslyn Park, and and the secretary that night was a guy named Guy, and he's still clean, and and that was in the spring of 1989, and it took me a while to get clean. I get a couple of days in use, and I get a day in use, and I get 2 days in use, and I get 3 days, and I go use, and I'd be kicking, and my back would hurt, my nose would be running, and just everything would hurt, and I'd be, and I get these panic attacks, and I go and I cop, and I just get some dope in my hand, I just have it in my hand, and all of a sudden I feel better. I didn't even have to use it. I just have it made me feel better. And that's when I realized about the obsession of the mind. It's all about the obsession of the mind. Because even if I didn't use it, I just had it. All of a sudden, the disease knew that was it, man. And I had it, and so anyway, what happened to me was I got sent back to jail for 90 days. It's funny how that stuff works. And I got out, and the woman I'd been living with was in a nut house. She was fighting a case, and she closed up the place, and I didn't have any money, and she had taken it all when I got arrested, and I'd taken it all, and the place was gone, and I don't know where my stuff was in storage, and and I had nothing. I had the stuff, the clothes. I walked into, I was arrested. I turned myself in the last time, but and I just, and I was like, what am I going to do? So I went over to this nut house that she was staying in, fighting this case, and one of the guys working there was a member of Narcotics Anonymous, who I knew. His name was Ronnie B., and he at that time had about 10 years, I think. And he said, Jim, sometimes you have to make a decision about what you're going to do with your life. And so what I did was, I went down to the welfare office, and I went to this place called this place on Skid Row that like is a homeless shelter, and I went to live there, and I got some bus tokens and some food stamps, and I started going to meetings, and I would go to meetings. I liked the big crowded meetings where you could stand in the back, because I didn't think I was going to be there long enough to have to sit down, because if you sit down in a meeting, then you're kind of trapped, and it's like. So if you go to big loud ones and you just stand and you know what, you can just wander out when you want to and just be gone. And sometimes I would do that, and I would just go back to my little homeless shelter room and and just and just kick it and and I did that for a while, and then they let me sleep on a couch for $5 a night. And I just went to meetings, and I just went to meetings, and I just went to meetings. I slept on this couch, and I did day labor, and I had $5 a day. I gave him $5, and you know what? And my life was good, But I was really, there's a lot of people that get clean, and they have like this pink cloud, and they're really happy, and everybody likes them, and they're, I wasn't that kind of person. When I got clean, I was not happy. I was not personable. I was really irritable. I was unhappy, and I would like to argue with people, And my only goal during the day was to figure out how many people I could piss off. And you know what? I just really outgoing. I had no social skills, and I didn't know what to do, and I was totally insane. But you know what? I didn't want to use anymore. I had a sponsor when I was using, and then when I went to jail for the last time, he went out to the valley. Then I got another sponsor, and he was a really good guy, but it just didn't work out. And then I asked this other guy to sponsor me, and he said no. And he said, but what about this other guy? And so I went over to this other guy, and I asked him, and he's been my sponsor now for 16 years. And, and that relationship with the sponsor has been, tremendous for me. It's, he started sponsoring me at the beginning of year 2000. It's 2006. We had coffee this morning, and I talked about, what was going on with me, and we've been doing that for 16 years, and it's amazing to think that I've had a relationship with somebody for 16 years. So anyway, I was living on this couch, and that's another thing. I go to a lot of meetings. I hear a lot of people talk about recovery houses and that kind of stuff, and I don't want to bag on recovery houses, but I just want to let you know that if you're out there somewhere and you're listening to this, and you don't have money, or you don't have the insurance, or you don't really want to go, you just don't want to go, people have been getting clean and staying clean in Narcotics Anonymous since 1953. And, and you might go to meetings, you might feel left out because people are all like, ganged up in these, whatever. North Hollywood versus Pasadena, and that whole shit, But the fact is that you can get clean just going to meetings. So you can sleep on a couch and go to meetings and still stay clean. So I just want to, put that out there because I think sometimes that gets confused. In fact, I'd like to go to a recovery house now. I have 16 years clean. Now I would like to go to a recovery house. Not one of those shitty ones they have around here, but like a nice one out in the country where like the nurses and starch skirts and the horses and stuff like that, Sit around. Because, when I was clean, I didn't want to say anything, but now, I'm happy to sit all around all day and talk about my issues, And you know what? They can put me in group. I'm cool with that. You know, it's just whatever. And you know, in fact, that was. But anyway, so if anyone knows a really nice recovery house that my insurance will cover, that's like, will take me after 16 years, send an email to jim@naspeakers.com. I'm out of here. So anyway, you know, so what I did was I ended up getting a commitment. You know, I ended up getting a commitment. I had like 10 days clean, and I ended up getting a commitment. And I was a coffee person at a meeting, Friday Night Claire meeting in Culver City, California. That was my first commitment. And I had felt that when I was at meetings, didn't feel like I belonged. You know, I would like stand out back, and you know, and I used to smoke, and I would like go to break, and I'd just have a cigarette. I'd never come back in. You know, I just never come back in. I would just like the outward like motion. I would just be gone. And you know, but then I got this coffee commitment. And this is back, like, I got clean, like, before designer coffee, you know, like, people used to actually go to meetings for the coffee. So I would, you know, make the coffee. I'd get there early because, you know what, I had to make the coffee. And I would stay late because I had to clean up the coffee. And I would sit there during the meeting and I'd have my little can of coffee right next to me, you know. So in case anybody wanted to know what I was doing there, I was the coffee guy. You know, it wasn't like I was, you know, and you know, and it really, and it sounds stupid now, but it really gave me a reason to be somewhere. And because you know, this is NA, we don't give you badges, and you don't get like jumped in or anything like that. You know, if you want to be, you know, if you want to be a member, you can be a member when you say you are. If you want to feel like you're a part of, take a commitment. That's, you know, that's my experience. And so, you know, I did that, and I got a job, and I started this whole real life thing. I got in a relationship when I had 20 days clean, and so that's my experience. She had 9 years, had never done a 4-step, and I had 20 days, and living on a couch. You know, we were like, it was perfect. Then a year later we broke up, and she had 10 years and never done a 4-step, and found another guy on a couch, you know, and and that's just the way it went. And I was off in life, you know, and I got a job, and then I got another job, and I've been employed, and I got another relationship, and I did all that stuff, and I don't have time to go into a lot of stuff, but I was the kind of guy that only wanted to I only would put, I may have $1,000 in my pocket, but I only put $2 in my gas tank, or $3 if I was going to the valley. If I wanted to go cop, there's no point in putting more than $2 in your gas tank, because you need to be liquid, right? Because you might, if you're out there, you're on a mission, you need to keep your resources, highly volatile, because you just never know what kind of situation you might run into, right? So, because trying to, you put $20 in the gas tank, and then you need that $20. It's hell trying to sell that gas back. And I had to come from that point of view to trying to live a real life. And my sponsor's like, go buy a car, go buy a new car. It's like, a new car, me? I thought when I made these kind of commitments to my life, I thought that made me more vulnerable. What if I'm at work and they know I have a new car? They know that they can fuck me around because I got a car note and I'm vulnerable and I'm just, it's like, they can get me now. So because that's my thinking. And so I bought a car and I tried to hide it from the people at work so they didn't know I had a new car. So finally they realized I had a car and they were like, wow, Jim's got a car. And they didn't try and fuck me around, It was really kind of a revelation. And, but that's just where I come from, I come from that point of view. And, I've done a lot of traveling. I've done a lot of traveling, and then one of the reasons we started this meeting is I've done a lot of traveling. I've gone to a lot of meetings. I've gone to meetings from Bangkok to London. I've been to meetings in China. I've been to meetings all over Canada, different countries, and you know what? And I realized that in a lot of places in the U.S. and other countries, there's not a lot of people with a lot of time, and there's not a lot of experience in Narcotics Anonymous, but they sure have got drug addicts, And so one of the reasons that I helped start this meeting was that because, I care about people today, and I care about these people out there, and I know there's people out there who want to hear the message, or there's people like me. There's people like me who might be listening to the internet right now, and they may just be here in Santa Monica, but they just can't get it together to actually come out here on a Sunday night and go to this meeting, because they just don't want to do it. And you know what? And if you're in that place, or if you're in the middle of, if you're a long ways from an NA meeting, or there are not many people, or there, or you go to NA and the people there are all assholes, it's the same in Santa Monica. I'm here, right? Or you know what? You just can't get it together to come to a meeting. You know what? It's okay. You can listen to the speakers who are on the site. You can call the hotline. You can read the literature. And you know what? You may want to just come to a meeting sometime. And if you're out there and you're listening to this and you're ever in Los Angeles, California, take this as a personal invitation from me to, to stop in on Sunday at 6:30 in Santa Monica, California, on the corner of 5th and Wilshire at the Wild Oats Supermarket. So it's not an endorsement of the particular supermarket. It's just the location. And you can come down here and you can, and we had a guy the other week from the Philippines. Listens to this in the Philippines, and it's so cool. And I just want to say that there's a lot of things that I'd like to talk about, but I haven't, because I can see the other speaker sitting next to me and it's getting antsy. But if you use what I was using, I used to be home at night and I think, you know what? I just want to stay home and get a good night's sleep and wake up in the morning and feel good. And then I'd be putting on my clothes and I'd be thinking, you know what? All I want to do is get a good night's sleep and stay home and wake up in the morning and feel good. And the next thing you know, I'd be like someplace I didn't want to be, and I'd be thinking, why didn't I just stay home? All I want to do is go home and get a good night's sleep. And then the next thing it would be like getting gray out, it's like it's gray out and you don't have any money, and where's your car, and all that kind of stuff. And so the reason I came to Narcotics Anonymous is that I used even when I didn't want to use. So if you use even when you don't want to use, you can find a new way to live right here in Narcotics Anonymous. And if you're in the area, please come down and see me some Sunday night. Thank you.
Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Please help us improve our ranking so others can find us by putting a review on Stitcher, iTunes, or your favorite podcast index. Nawpod is ad-free thanks to the folks supporting the show with $1 more per month. If you enjoy listening, you can join them by going to nawpod.xyz and looking for the donate link. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.